We will call our Public Safety Committee meeting to order here at 12:30. And looks like we got everybody here. Mr. Davis will not be joining us today. So we can kick it off here with the presentation and update by the Police Department regarding the monthly crime statistics, the traffic unit, and the use of UAS. Good afternoon, Chief.
Good afternoon, Chairperson O'Connor, and committee members.
So formal.
Why is that funny, but it is?
I do have a PowerPoint somewhere. All right, okay. Thank you for your patience. Update for crime statistic purposes, and as you can see from this slide, year-to-date homicides, we have had 16 tragic occurrences of homicides. The bright side is that is tied with our lowest over the past 4 years and trending in that direction. We're hopeful to keep it up. Part of that is the excellent cooperation that we have from the people in the city of Grand Rapids to really look for ways to address root cause issues, but it also has a lot to do with the work that the police officers and especially the homicide detectives are doing out there to hold this very small group of extremely violent people accountable. And we're seeing a lot of positive in that. As you can see from the past 2 years, we're far above the national clearance rate in homicides. We actually just recently brought on board our first retired homicide detective to come back and to pilot a cold case program, and has already started reaching out to victims' families of older cases, some of which he was actually involved in as a detective himself. Very well regardless, and I'm hoping that this program works out well and we can solve some cases. As I said, 16 total murders so far in this year. We have 8 of those already closed through arrest and prosecution. Several others are in review by the prosecutor. 344 illegally possessed handguns taken off the street through the month of September. So the patrol officers out on the street are doing a phenomenal job as well. Auto thefts, you can see a small dip there. The next slide tells a better story, and that is, as you can see, back in June of 2022, we saw a spike in the Kia and Hyundai thefts. We have seen that trend drop off, fortunately, as we do a better job both of enforcement and education of the public regarding the issues with those vehicles. Unfortunately, you see September 2023 actually notched up for the first time in the past 5 or so months as compared to last year. And part of that is a group of 4 juveniles who were using stolen vehicles to commit smash and grab burglaries. And we've tied them to at least 16 stolen autos, as well as dozens of burglaries in the city of Grand Rapids and throughout Kent County and Ottawa County. So that number is a little skewed. Those juveniles are in custody. I can't share too much information because they are juveniles, but that somewhat explains the crop up in September 2023 auto thefts. Ag assaults are trending down continue to trend down, which is good. And robberies as well, the low of the past 4 years year to date. So looking good in that way as well. And I'm joined here today by Captain Siver of the Training Engagement Division, as well as Officer Justin Ewald from the Traffic Division. He's going to share with you a presentation right now about the traffic unit, I should say. All right.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Chief said, I'm Officer Justin Ewald with the Grand Rapids Police Department Traffic Unit, here today to give you guys a little introduction to what we do in the traffic unit, talk a little bit about our history, our members, and what we do with our time. So who are we? Our unit currently consists of 1 sergeant and 5 officer positions. Currently we have 4 people assigned in the unit. We vary in experience from 4 years to about 30 years, so a pretty pretty wide group of experience in our unit. Our unit, in order to get into the unit, there's a high level of training immediately upon entrance to the unit. You can see that we take 120 hours of crash reconstruction at the very beginning, an 80-hour motorcycle operator course, There's a motorcycle field training course, that's what FTO stands for, and various ongoing education. As for me, I've been in police work for about 15 years. About half of that time has been here at GR, and about 5 years in the traffic unit. Me personally, I'm about, average in that 30 years of police work, 15 right in the middle. In traffic alone, I have about 500 hours of reconstruction training and about 400 hours of motorcycle training, and I'm certified to testify as an expert witness in crash reconstruction. So a little bit about what we do in the traffic unit. There's 3 primary responsibilities in the traffic unit. Major investigations that involve traffic crashes, traffic crime, which are typically a little bit more minor, like misdemeanor traffic crimes, and finally enforcement and motors. Anytime I say the word motors, I'm referring to motorcycles. In police jargon, we always refer to motorcycles as motors. It's just a history thing. It's always been that way. So as far as major investigations go, we are in charge of investigating any fatal, felonious, or officer-involved crashes. In those cases, we utilize crash reconstruction, the science of crash reconstruction, to figure out the details of what happened. We have equipment and training and investigative methods specific to traffic crimes. These major traffic crimes are usually things like a hit and run causing death or an OWI causing death. Anything that's felonious usually involves, unfortunately, someone passing away. So we typically get about 30 to 40 of those a year. This is where all that extensive training in crash reconstruction comes from. As you can see from my little photo there, that is step 18 of a math problem to figure out the crush energy that went into that crash to determine the vehicle speeds. So there's a lot of math and physics involved. That's why it requires quite a bit of training to get there. As far as where we receive that training, we receive it from an institution called IPTM. It's the Institute for Police and Technology and Management out of the University of North Florida. The Michigan State Police, we also utilize them, but they utilize the same curriculum from IPTM. It's currently kind of the nationwide leader in police education. Historically, Michigan State University did a lot of education for police reconstruction, but they have, since their professors who did that retired, they've kind of let the program slide, and we've moved on to IPTM. One thing I mentioned on that previous slide is that we all go through continuing education. So you'll take week-long courses. That's how I got up to that 500 hours. You'll take a week-long course on special topics that might be like commercial vehicles, motorcycles, or pedestrians, and that gives you a greater expertise to deal with different situations you might encounter in a reconstruction. A little bit about some of our equipment that we utilize in creating these reconstruction cases. You can see the first one listed there is GPS. We utilize commercial-grade GPS units to accurately map a scene. You might see like somebody on a construction site with a pole out there with a big antenna on top. We have several of those in our unit so that we can make sub-centimeter measurements of the entire scene and the roadway and all of the evidence, so that when that's plugged into a computer, an exact scale drawing is made, which we can make our calculations from. Important information in those calculations is friction. We are actually able to measure the friction of a roadway using different tools. We have a device called an accelerometer. When you basically drive in a car with an accelerometer in it, it can tell you the friction of the roadway. Or we will actually get out there old school and use a tire, and you can drag a tire with a scale and determine the friction of the roadway. We have a device called a Bosch. It's an ACM downloader. An ACM is an airbag control module. So all modern vehicles have airbags in them, and they have an airbag control module that decides when those airbags will deploy. Anytime there's an event over a certain change of speed in the vehicle, it triggers that ACM to make a recording, and we're able to actually use this device to download all of the information in that ACM. And that gives us things like the vehicle speed prior to the crash, what the wheels are doing, if they're traveling at different speeds, if they're braking, driver's behavior, if they're engaging the steering wheel. It'll tell us actual energy forces acting on the car. It gives us all kinds of information that is key. It's probably our most important piece of equipment when doing crash reconstruction. A lot of times it gives us it's one piece of the immediate answer, which is how fast were they going before they crashed. We utilize a bunch of different kinds of software. We have forensic CAD software. CAD stands for computer-aided drafting, like you'd see that they use to create a blueprint. That's what we plug those data points into and create our maps that are scale drawings of a scene. We have extensive calculation software. So obviously we have to learn to do it like that on paper, but thankfully we don't have to do it that way every time. Now we have software that helps us instead of having to draw out our big calculations. And finally, like I said, scale CAD drawings. A new piece of equipment that we've recently received that is really an up-and-coming area in crash reconstruction is the UASs. What some people might call a drone. UASs allow us to create three-dimensional drawings of that. The computer utilizes measurements from the UAS in conjunction with the GPS units to create exact 3D models of the situation. So I mentioned earlier more minor traffic crimes. We also act as the detective in those cases. One of the most common for us is operating while intoxicated cases. I'm sure you guys know any type of charges that are brought to someone, there's a detective on the backside that has to put that case together and present it to the court. So we operate as a detective in these cases. They're a little bit more basic investigation that doesn't require weeks of work like a fatal investigation would. Usually we do several of these a day. We get about 400 or 500 a year. What we do is the follow-up investigations, follow up on the laboratory work for blood work, organize the paperwork, present it to a judge, and swear criminal complaints. We also review all driving misdemeanors that happen on the department. Our unit is kind of the expert to make sure that the proper citation was issued to people, whether it be a suspended license, an unlicensed driver, hit and run crashes, anything misdemeanor like that. We review those cases for accuracy from the officer and forward those to the court. In any kind of case preparation that we do, we're preparing the warrants and affidavits, we're maintaining evidence, marking it correctly in our software systems, and filing charges with the court. So a little bit about enforcement, that next piece of what we do in our unit. I know this is kind of a bit of math here for you guys, but there's a reason for it. This is talking about why we do this. A lot of people don't realize this. They think if you're going twice as fast that it's twice as dangerous, but that's not actually the case. This graph, what it shows is the kinetic energy of a Toyota Camry. So you can see at 40 kilometers an hour there, it's about 75,000 joules of energy. So one would think, well, if it were going twice as fast, it would be twice as much energy, right? But it's not. It's actually 4 times as much. So at 80 kilometers an hour, it's 300,000 joules of energy. What that means is speed kills. It's energy that causes injuries and traffic crashes. So slowing people down to appropriate speed limits is extremely important for public safety. When you have people going 20 over what's known to be safe on a roadway, that's a lot more energy that can cause a lot more injuries to citizens. So how do we conduct this enforcement? Well, we do it in a data-driven fashion. You can see from my graph here, it's directly out of our software that measures traffic crashes in the city. And it shows us where the hot spots, where the most dangerous locations are. We utilize this information along with citizen complaints because speeding is the #1 complaint for our citizens in the city. So we utilize those two pieces of information in conjunction to focus our enforcement efforts. Obviously, being a unit of 4 guys, we don't have the ability to blanket the city of enforcement. So what we utilize is targeted enforcement for utilizing data to ensure we're making the biggest impact on public safety. Our goal is to utilize this information in a data-driven fashion, like I said, to make the biggest impact. A little bit about the equipment that we use. You can see in the background there, this is actually a citizen asked us to pose for this for him, but it was out at the cruise down on 28th Street. He's like, hey, will you pull in behind me? But it is a great piece of equipment right there, our motors. So in the summertime, like I said, we all have motors. It's part of being in the unit is you go through motorcycle training. So we utilize our motors. In our unit, we all have what we call semi-marked squad cars. You can see they don't say police on the side, but they do have internal lights and they light up. This is good for us because it allows us to be a little less obvious to be able to catch those people that are driving in an unsafe manner. All of us are equipped with radars. This is what people typically think of when they think of speed enforcement as a radar. A radar actually takes a bit of training to understand, because what a radar does is it shoots out a big beam like this in front of your car, and it bounces off all of the cars in front of you and comes back. And it takes a bit of training from an officer to understand what car is being read on that number, because there's an algorithm inside the device that measures things' importance, like how close it is to you, how big the thing is, and how fast the thing's going. So an officer needs to be able to speak in court as to why they think why that device was pointing out their car. Usually the fastest car is a good reason, because that's ranks high in that. But our unit actually prefers another method of enforcement, and that's this. This is a LiDAR. So these are great, one, because they mount right on the side of our motorcycles, but we can use them in the car out of the window. Unlike a radar, they do not work through glass. What it does is it's really just like a super accurate measuring tape. So it shoots a laser out, like there's a little rangefinder, and it shoots an invisible laser out that lands right on a car, and it measures it 2 times very quickly, and it can tell the distance and the time between those 2 measurements and tell me exactly how fast that car is going. So these are great because they're accurate to the vehicle. I'm literally putting a little dot on the bumper of the car that I know that's the car that's getting it. It tells me the exact range when I measure somebody's speed. So when we testify about these in court, we can say, I know it was exactly that car. So we only utilize these in our unit, one, just because they're a lot more expensive than a radar, and they require specific training and use. Like I said, you can't use it through glass, you can't use it moving. So typically it's more of a traffic officer specific device. A little bit more about our motorcycles, and their uses. Like I spoke about before, they are great for enforcement. There's lots of reasons for that. They're unexpected. People aren't expecting to see a motorcycle tucked away somewhere. Allows us to better observe traffic without impacting it, to make enforcement decisions. They offer agility and mobility that you don't necessarily get in a vehicle. We can catch up to people a lot quicker, and we can get through traffic. You know, if an offender's in the middle of a pack, you can utilize a motorcycle to catch up to people better. There's also a strong tradition of the use of motorcycles in special events. Things like parades, like the Riverbank Run, Marathon. You'll see motorcycles both through tradition and through logistics. They're good at it, leading those different events. I have public interactions here. I can tell you, in 15 years of police work, the best way for me to have positive citizen interactions is on a motorcycle. Anytime I pull up to stop and take a break in a parking lot or go grab lunch, there's always somebody that wants to come and talk about the motorcycle, and they think it looks cool, or they want to let their kid take a photo sitting on it, which we do all the time. I think I put one in there, but yeah. Kids love them. It's a great tool for us to interact with the public in a positive fashion. They're also used in dignitary motorcades. I've participated in a number of motorcades for various presidents and vice presidents and family members of the First Family. There's a lot of tradition there, utilizing motorcycles in dignitary protection. And again, there's a speed and agility that you can't get in a car. When you're doing a motorcade on the freeway and what they call the package, you know, the president is doing 70, you need to be able to pass him at a quick rate to get back in front to block off the next road. So it does require a lot of training. It's something we train with the Michigan State Police and all of the surrounding agencies for. A lot of us think it's also one of the more fun things we get to do. Finally, in other emergencies, you know, motorcycles just offer the opportunity to get to places that cars can't get to, and to get to them quickly. Grand Rapids has been using motorcycles for about 100 years, so there's a long tradition of it on our department. A little bit about the training that goes into becoming a motorcycle operator. We call it Motor School. It is run internally. Both myself and Sergeant Barthel are IPTM certified motorcycle instructors, which means we've gone to instructor school to be able to teach motorcycles. Sergeant Barthel has also gone to Northwestern University instructor school. So for motor school, it's an 80-hour class. Res Life generously lets us use their property, their parking lots to put on this course every spring typically. There is a field training program where newer officers ride with experienced motor officers for a set amount of time. All officers do what's called a spring certification, so it's a week-long training every spring. It's a lot like motor school for experienced guys. You have to pass all of the same tests to prove that you can still ride. We participate in a fall refresher, which is a couple days of more advanced practice. If you've ever seen police motorcycle training, it's always these real tight cone courses. Make sure you're proficient in the maneuverability of your vehicle. And finally, we participate yearly in an event called Bikes on the Bricks. It's in Flint, Michigan. It's what's known as a police motor rodeo. It's basically like very difficult riding in very tight cone courses and a competition basically. Departments throughout the Midwest and Canada come to participate. You can see by my little photo, we've had great success at Bikes on the Bricks over the last few years. Both myself, Officer Cole, who's brand new with us, Officer Thompson, who's been with us for a couple years. Our first year, all three of us took first place in the novice division. Since then, Sergeant Barthel and myself regularly place in the top three in the expert division, and Officer Bingle pretty much always wins the senior division. He's our senior guy.
He did his own crash testing, too.
Yeah, well, you speak about that, to stray off topic a little bit about crash testing. When you're going through motor school, most people don't realize this. Our bikes have special cages on them to be able to handle low-speed crashes without damage. And a little bit of an example of how physically taxing motor school is for people. In that 2 weeks of motor school, it's typical that someone will crash their bike at low speed, without injury, 100 to 200 times. And you just have to get proficient at knowing how to do that and how to pick your bike back up and get back on the horse and keep trying, because it takes a lot of effort to be able to ride in the way that we ride and to do it safely. So learning in a controlled environment is how you do that. A little bit more about our kind of tack on extra responsibilities. We also review all of the UD10. So UD10 is a Michigan State crash report. We review in our unit all of those that go through the department. It's about 4,500 crashes a year in the city that we review. There's also the citizen reporting, direct reporting system for very minor crashes that they just want a number for. We do review about 1,760 of those a year. We maintain the sex offender registry. I maintain the impound lot from the department side, which is getting the forms over here to purchasing to be able to auction off cars. That requires some police work. We do a lot of departmental training. I talked about what Sergeant Barthel and I do in terms of motorcycle instructor. I'm also, though, a departmental instructor for driving, an EVO instructor we call it. And Sergeant Barthel is a firearms and DT instructor. We also handle all of the calibration for equipment on the department. So PBTs, which are alcohol breath tests, we maintain the calibration on all of those. And we calibrate all the speedometers on all the squad cars and the radars in the department. Also, finally, I'm the elected trustee of our pension, which I and the vice chairman. I represent the members' interests on our pension, and Officer Bingle is our union president. Finally, just a bit about the brand new thing that we have in our unit. Those are the UASs. So we've been part of the rollout department-wide. It's a good fit for our unit because of our experience with technical equipment, with all of our GPS equipment and such. So we handle the procurement, the policy and maintenance of the devices. Currently, we have 8 Mavics. We have 2 different models of Mavics, just visual ones and thermal ones, and 2 Matrices, 30Ts. Those are the slightly larger ones. Those have thermal imaging. We, in our department, are handling the training. So all pilots on the department have a FAA UAS pilot's license. It's actually a federal requirement, It's what's known as a Part 107 license. Sergeant Barthel and I are working on moving the training to get that license in-house after the initial rollout where it was done externally. We handle the administration, which is keeping track of the equipment and the pilots, the registrations, all of that. The software for the vehicles or the aircraft, we handle all of that. As far as the software we're using with the devices, we use Axon to maintain the evidence and DroneSense to maintain flight logs. Every time a UAS is used, when it's technically capable, it's recording. I give that caveat when it's technically capable because when we use them in crash reconstruction, it's taking photos. So it can't be taking videos and photos at the same time. We utilize software called Pix4D to create 3D models. So that picture you can see on the PowerPoint on the bottom, that's not actually a photograph. That is a reconstructed 3D model using Pix4D. So it utilizes a UAS to take several hundred photos from above at all different angles. And the software interpolates that with the GPS unit to recreate that crash in 3 dimensions. And it's so accurate that it again is sub-centimeter, so it can be used to make the calculations for your math. It is definitely the biggest improvement in crash reconstruction technology in the last 20 years. It's what everybody's using now. So it was a good fit for our unit to be handling the UASs since they're so important for crash reconstruction. So again, Justin Ewald with the traffic unit. One little last bit, you see that patch right there. I'm not wearing one today, but in our normal traffic uniform, we wear that patch on our shoulder. That patch actually originated in the 50s for the traffic unit, so it's a bit of a history throwback. If you see us with a different patch, that winged wheel is kind of the international symbol for a motorcycle officer, so we're blessed to be able to represent that. Any questions for me?
Very good. Colleagues? Commissioner Moody?
Thank you for this report. I'm very fascinated with the fact that this traffic unit has got some extensive training with the motorcycles and with just traffic itself. What I wanted to just ask you, hypothetically, are these Harley-Davidson motorcycles you're riding?
They are not, Commissioner Moody. They are BMW R1200s.
Okay.
So those are the 2 types of motorcycles used in police work, is BMWs and Harleys. Harleys are more comfortable, and the BMWs are better in every other way.
Oh, okay.
They're faster, more maneuverable, better for actual police work. But there's a lot of tradition with Harleys in that way, and I know years ago they were here.
Good. Also, one question, hypothetically, too, is in your traffic studies, can you tell the difference between a person who is using a motor vehicle for suicide?
We've had a couple of cases where that's been a question, where there's not impairment, in blood work or something like that. But it's hard to get into the mind of somebody who's now passed away, right? So we can only speculate, and that's not really something that we're allowed to do in court. So we just present the evidence that, we don't know why this decision was made, but their actions led to this consequence.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Colleagues? Mr. Kettle? Turn your mic on, please.
Can I write it down? Oh, yeah, I've been noticing, and I'm sure we all have, the amount of people are just blowing through yield and stop signs and whatever. Red, yellow lights, who needs them,
Right.
That's real dangerous. Is there any plans to jump on that?
Yeah, it is one of the things, when I talk about enforcement at targeted intersections, the enforcement is speed leading up to the intersection and red lights at them. Really, we're working to target the area where we can make the most impact, but there is certainly have been growing violations over the years. I think some of that is, the post-2020 culture and just staffing issues that's, beyond my scope. I guess what I could say is we certainly have a passion for trying to make the motoring public safer, and the more resources in our unit, the more resources we can put towards that, the better.
All right. City Manager.
Just Just real quickly, thank you for the report. I want to go back to the motor vehicle theft and just point out from last summer to this summer, at least my calculations for the month of June, July, August are 3 months, 39% reduction in auto thefts, which is a good trend to see. The other, I wanted to point out the advanced mathematics and calculus for the fire chief, so that when we get fire suppression presentations, we want to see calculations on force and all, water volume and everything, velocity, etc. Thirdly, in terms of the speed enforcement, that is, you're exactly right. I hear a lot of complaints from the residents, and we've talked about the, at least with some commissioners, about the permanent, we have the traffic trailer for awareness that's pulled across the city, but we talked about either the need for more trailers, or I know, Commissioner, you've asked about permanent infrastructure with radars on them, either in poles, and we have both our mobile GR director and police chief here. I'd like to just hear their thoughts on their views of whether or not that would help in terms of traffic enforcement and prevention.
As far as prevention, I think to see that positive impact, the combination of those trailers paired with enforcement, and I think, Josh, correct me if you disagree, but I think we could see a very big positive impact there. Having said that, I don't discount just the ability to deploy one of those trailers, because I know we've done it with our camera trailers, and just as a gesture of goodwill, and we've gotten a lot of feedback just to let the public know we care and we're focusing on that area. But I think to really see the numbers come down, we'd be interested in pairing it with the enforcement.
And on the permanent radars that you may see in some school areas and other communities, any thoughts on whether or not that would be helpful?
Yeah, the speed limit signs that also have the radar built into them, I've started to see those pop up in a lot of other places that are just, again, I know that it doesn't work without enforcement, but, a guy with a lead foot like me also notices that, pays a lot more attention to.
Yeah, I agree. It's if you're intent on breaking the law, that's not a police officer you're going to go through. But there are times, and Josh and I were talking earlier, that there's a speed limit change. The speed drops from 35 to 30, and if it's not in your head and you've been traveling the same road for that, and then you see, oh, geez, I'm doing 40 and it's now a 30-mile zone, for individuals that do want to comply with the law, that would be helpful. Agree, yeah. Any? Okay.
But just to point out, though, that the research suggests that they actually don't have a demonstrable benefit to reducing crashes, but they can have some behavioral reinforcement, particularly when you're transitioning from speed limit zones.
Any idea what those signs cost? Is that
Approximately $30,000 for the fixed location signs. We'd add those to the rest of the inventory. We're working on an updated, because I think the scale would go down as you purchase them. And just as a reminder, the city owns 6 speed trailers. Those cost $13,000. And we are averaging about 40 placements a year. And we're able to meet both the ones that come from the traffic unit as well as the citizen requests.
So a small sign on a pole costs 3 times as much as a trailer?
It's built in for, they have to have power. We can do the solar ones. We're still exploring some of those options, and we've talked about maybe testing it out on some of the high corridors that the officer identified during the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then lastly, if the chief we were talking about traffic enforcement, but can you speak in a way that we're doing consistent with our values within the department, and making sure that no one person, no community feels unnecessarily profiled by traffic enforcement?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And that is what we aim for, and what I believe we are doing. One thing that Officer Ewald did not mention was the department he came from before he was here, and like me, he came from a large department. He was a Dallas police officer for years. We're talking about CompStat, which was in place in Dallas as well as Chicago. It doesn't quite have the same application here, but the basis of that is using the data to drive where your resources are going and make sure that you're doing it in an equitable manner. So as you saw on one of the slides where it showed the hot spots of the intersections, this group of 4 officers and 1 sergeant is not focused on a metric of success of get out there and get tickets. The metric of success is lowering those hot spots down to just ensuring more safety. So they will go to a geographic location, look for vehicles exhibiting dangerous behavior, put the stops on. And again, the metric for success is not a ticket. It is to change that behavior. If they're making a traffic stop and an individual has a very legitimate reason, for example, what I said, I didn't realize it was dropping from a 40 to a 30, they have the discretion to do that. I'm not looking for numbers from them. We're just looking for a safer Grand Rapids, using data to see where the safety, where we can make those gains in safety by deploying them to areas where crashes are occurring, just to reduce the crashes. That's the goal. And so as far as an equitable manner, it's just about the cars driving safely. And of course, we have bias-based policing policy, a very strong accountability system if they waver in any way, but I don't see that from this this traffic section here. I think they're doing a fine job in a very equitable and effective manner.
Thank you. All right, we'll close that presentation out, and we can move on to our second item on the agenda this morning or this afternoon. It's an update regarding safety and nuisance concerns caused by wildlife in the city of Grand Rapids. Looks like Mr. Hertz coming to the mic.
Good afternoon, committee members. How y'all doing? Good. My name is James Hurt. I'm the Managing Director for the Public Services Group. I was here back at your August meeting to give you kind of a snapshot of some things we were learning in the city in terms of primarily not only wildlife, but the deer population. We went through a number of other communities and how they were trying to address this issue in terms of population, some of the strategies that they employed. We provided a fair amount of data for you to look at, and wanted to just kind of circle back today just to kind of give you a brief update on where we're at. It's been a couple of months. Just to remind you a little bit of our philosophy, we're trying to coexist with our wildlife in the city. This is actual picture in our city, down in the southeast area of town, where we do have deer that are in our neighbor's front yard. We talked a little bit about legal considerations last time. Public Act 451 of 1994 delegates that authority for wildlife in the state of Michigan to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. I think Ed Kettle can probably attest to some of that in this time in the legislature. So just wanted to kind of remind you of that part. Some of the strategies that I kind of went over last meeting that other communities are utilizing in terms of trying to manage their deer population is hunting, sterilization, use of repellents, fencing, culling, public education, birth control, habitat management, just to name a number of them that communities are using. I showed this slide back in August just to kind of give you some of the data again. Our highest time in terms of crash reports, deer car accidents, 2019, we had 9,500 accidents in the city between a car and a deer. That number has been going down. To see a little tip up in 2021. I remind you, this data is a few months old, but the trend seems to be going down in terms of the car deer accidents since 2019. However, we are seeing an increase in what we're picking up on the side of the street. So I shared this at the last meeting as well. The Public Works Department, in terms of picking up carcasses on the side of the street, that number has been continually growing since 2019. So there's kind of an inverse relationship to the car deer accidents versus what we're collecting. Not sure I can explain that. My only thing I can talk about is in terms of speed. Not everyone's reporting an accident. They may bump a deer. The deer may run off and end up, in somebody's yard, and that's where we have to come and pick it up. We are seeing an increase in calls as well. Some of you, I know commissioners that are on this committee, have received some communication from residents the last probably 3-4 weeks. I'm inquiring about what we're trying to do in terms of overpopulation of deer, that they're eating their their landscaping, they're in their yards. And I know Commissioner Moody and I talked a bit about this morning. There are pockets of population that we have in our city that have a number of deer. So here's my update for today. When I took the direction I had from the committee at the last meeting was to go back and talk to the DNR about potentially doing an assessment to evaluate what kind of population we have in our city. This will require, some surveying. Tends to happen in the wintertime when the leaves are off the trees, so they can do it even from aerial, where you can spot where deer herds are located. In my communications with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, they talked about the USDA Wildlife Services. They contract with them to help provide some of the services. So my conversations with the DNR is that we're going to have an on-site meeting. They were going to come to Grand Rapids and walk through what that assessment looks like. How does it happen? When can we do it? And my hope is to try to have this meeting with them before December 1st. So we can kind of lay out a plan. If we're going to try to do something during the winter months, we can do that between December and February or March. We've also had some conversation with some of our adjacent neighbors. We talked about collaborating at the last meeting with Kent County Animal Control and Health Department. But since that time, we've had communication with some of our municipalities around us, the city of Walker and the city of Kentwood. And I have the city of Kentwood mayor here who's going to give you a little bit of an update. I'm going to invite him up here in a second on what they're doing in Kentwood. And I think that we talked last meeting about this being a regional approach. And it seems like this is a good time for us to be having our partners around the table to try to address this not only from a city of Grand Rapids standpoint, but from a regional perspective. So at this time, I'm going to ask Mayor Kepley if you would like to come up, say a couple words, and tell us what you're doing in Kentwood.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Kepley, and in Kentwood we do things a little differently. So when you elect the mayor, you're hiring the city manager. So I do both mayor and city manager. So I get all the calls most of the time about deer or coyotes or whatever. It's really interesting. This morning before 9 o'clock, I was driving to work, and a beautiful white truck was parked in the middle lane. Pulled up. Are you okay? And he says, "Yeah, I hit a deer." and so pulled forward. Sure enough, radiator fluid out. He's on the phone. I get to my office, and one of the emails I had this morning was a 10-point buck in someone's backyard. So this whole thing with the deer has been a very important topic. It happens a lot. I get a lot of complaints of the herd that goes through someone's yard, eating everything in its sight, with their neighbor feeding the herd right next door. So you're in the same boat. A lot of complaints, a lot of near misses, a lot of desire to put up signs at specific road crossings and areas of roads just to warn people that this is a common deer crossing. And so, I would say probably about a year ago, with all the complaints and seeing it myself, and like you, the city of Kentwood is divided into sections. We have this thing called, 96, 196, 131. We have 96, 28th Street, Patterson, and are the deer really crossing 96? Don't really know, but the herd that is in my neck of the woods is at least 26 plus in a couple square mile area. And so we decided that we needed information, right? We just needed information. How are we going to get the information? And I'm going to bring up Shay Gallagher. He's the deputy city administrator up here because he's been taking point lead on this. But it was really great to see your numbers, and our numbers really correlate with yours. When you look at let's just look at 22 with the deer accidents. You have 84 reported in 2022. We had 68, but you're 4 times our size. So we have probably more green space than you do. I thought that was quite interesting. And of course, our deer caucus is more than what is reported by the police, so correlating with yours. So in 2016, we had 70 deer caucuses. Within 6 years, we doubled that to 143. You show in that neck of the woods deer caucus of, I saw it here in a second. Turn the page. 300 last year. So our numbers are increasing like your numbers are increasing. So we needed information. Really, what are we talking about? What's the deer population of the city of Kentwood? And really, when I was talking to Mark up at the MML conference, and it's like, don't the deer know city limits? Can't they stay? And so this just makes more sense that we handle this as a Metro 6 or a regional area. Just let you know, if you didn't know this, we're incredibly special, and it's beneficial of what we do here. We work together. very few places in Michigan have the type of working relationships we do. So whether it's deers or trash or whatever it is, we just work together to make things better for the greater Grand Rapids area. So I would say let's add deer to that conversation and see what we can do. Shay.
Good afternoon. So Kentwood has partnered with the Grand Valley State Biology Department. They've done a grid pattern survey across their city. At the end of that, this should be concluding here near the end of the fall. They'll create GIS heat maps for us. We've already compiled that with our crash data as well as carcass removal. And they'll also do a dropping analysis. We're trying to get a sampling to see how diverse our deer population is, to see if it's actually larger than what we think it is. From that point, we'll use that data. We will also speak with the DNR and try to formulate a plan to move forward on how we address the deer situation and what management avenues we take with that. And Grand Valley will also create heat maps for us, illustrating population or habitat loss. As we know, development has really exploded in West Michigan, so part of this is understanding our impact on where the deer live.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the trail cams?
No, that's okay.
So, we haven't really faced this, to this regard, saying, hey, we're going to really look into this. And so, we've had some creative ideas with trail cams. They're not that much, so let's put up some trail cams. And, for those in our staff who just love deer, maybe, hunting deer, it's really an interesting study of really what do we see out there. So we're trying to gather as much information and trying to be as responsible as possible to take care of the issues at hand. I don't want to put drivers at risk with a huge population of deer, and how do we do this and how do we handle this? I think the best thing is information. We need the information so that we can administer this and appropriately.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Shay. So we talked about the next step, really getting together with the DNR, USDA, City of Kentwood, the City of Walker, perhaps the City of Wyoming, whatever on the Metro 6 is interested in joining us, Kent County, and kind of devising a plan to go forward to really ascertain what is the population that we have in our cities, in this whole region area. We all have ideas, we have some sense, we know where the car deer accidents are happening, we know where residents are submitting complaints to us. I mean, the mayor talked about 26 in his neck of the woods, no pun intended. But how do we measure that? And then what do we do with that information? And I think collectively as a region, we should really focus in on that. And then we can come back. I'd like to come back in January if we have enough information to share with you, even if it's a very brief update, and tell you where we're at. So just wanted to give you a quick update. Mr. Chair, happy to answer any questions for me or for our friends from Kentwood.
Thank you, Start. City Manager, did you want to say anything? So put the mic on there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to, I did ask Mayor Kepley to expand the scope of the GVSU review to see if they would allow an addendum to additionally review by heat map. Do the same thing for us that they're doing in Kentwood. And so we're exploring that, and hopefully we could all have the same data set, if you will, as we both have these mutual conversations with DNR. Now, I'm sure if Walker's going to engage Kentwood, GVSU as well.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Moody?
Yep, thank you. I want to get clarity on the hunting piece, because I want to be real clear and have some public safety measures in place for people who might get this confused with that they can hunt a deer in their backyard in the city of Grand Rapids with residents next door and across the street.
Well, I think we shared last meeting, shooting a gun is not an option. That's illegal in the city of Grand Rapids. You are able to use bow and arrow when a safe distance to your neighbors, and I don't know what the safe distance is. I don't think it defines it in the ordinance. We certainly are not trying to encourage that. So if you have a 3-acre lot that you live on, that would be an option. If you have a 100-foot wide lot, it's not an option. Would you like us to provide you some clarity on that?
Maybe Madam Attorney wants to turn her microphone on.
Madam
here.
Attorney, would you like to weigh in on that?
I was just gonna say you have to, first of all, get permission, but then you have to stay within the fold of your property. It can't be going over into the neighbor's yard or out into the street.
Can't miss.
Can't miss, right?
You can't miss.
That's with the bow.
That's correct.
I just want that to be clarified because, I don't want anybody to get the intent that they can take a gun and shoot in the neighborhood at a deer. Because I don't want anybody to get hurt because deer have a tendency, once they're hit, they will run. And as you said earlier, they could fall in someone else's yard. And then you have another problem because now you're trespassing.
Yep.
Anyone else? Questions or comments, Mr. Fan?
Really appreciate the reports and the collaboration. Again, I think that's huge all the way to the state of Michigan because this is a common problem in many areas. And in the past week, I've had observations of that during a book club, and it's happening for real. And I think it's very important, even though it's a nuisance problem now, that get ahead of the problem and work together in ways of culling this or however it gets done. It's not going to fix itself, I don't think, because population keeps moving out and moving into their habitat. And so deer are forced out into safe places, some of which in the city are very tasty for them with gardens and flowers and so forth. So thank you very much, and let's stay with the program.
Thank you.
Mr. Kettle?
Real quickly, these deer, I have them all over my neighborhood, and they're just about tame. They don't even care. You can go out and talk to them. They come up on they come up to my porch. They eat bird seed out of this little thing we have for squirrels, and it's crazy. And the dogs, they're not even afraid of the dogs, and the dogs, I think, in my neighborhood know the deer because they don't even bark at them anymore. So it's crazy. I think they're gambling too. So anyway, yeah, I'm very familiar with this subject, and that can be helpful. Let me know.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? No. Well, I appreciate Mr. Hurt providing this update. Thank you to Mayor Kepley and his team for being a partner in this conversation. I, too, spoke with Mayor Carey and Walker and know that they're working on it, so I appreciate the chance to have this collaboration. And I know all of us have gotten a lot more comments and emails after the first discussion and news article about this, but, just want to assure folks that we are taking it seriously and working on it. So thank you all.
Then maybe what we should do is just plant a huge area of hostas, and all the deer will go there.
It's a nice park next to your house, from what I understand.
Yeah, great, yeah.
All right, with that, this meeting will be adjourned at 1:22. Thank you, everyone.